Retroid is back to their roots in their latest handheld release. I really dumped on the Retroid Pocket 2. It was kind of a terrible device. But then the Retroid Pocket 2 Plus really kicked things into high gear, with the Retroid Pocket 3 and 3 Plus following up shortly after. Now we're back to the Retroid Pocket 2 form factor with the new Retroid Pocket 2S. Is the 2S worth considering? Are the hardware improvements enough to make it stand apart from the rest? And especially when Retroid already has the 3 Plus, which is a fantastic handheld. Well, the Retroid Pocket 2S has a fantastic price, and we're going to take a look at the hardware, software, and gaming performance to see if it's worth considering as your next retro handheld gaming emulator. So get subscribed and let's get started. This video is sponsored by TomTalk.
Hey you, Mr. Scattered Brain.
Whoa, what's going on?
It's me, your C-Mac.
Huh?
Look, I know I just interrupted your game, but I've got something on my mind. Can we chat for a sec?
I guess so.
Well, with the holidays coming up, I thought maybe I could ask for a holiday gift.
Yeah, that's fair.
So, I was thinking maybe you can get me one of those nice, slim profile cases made specifically for Steam Deck. In fact, TomTalk already makes the perfect one. It comes in 3 different colors: white, gray, and black. The TomTalk case has a nice and soft interior to keep me nice and protected while we're on the go. It's even got cutouts in the case so my analog sticks and buttons won't feel any pressure while the case is closed. You can buy it on Amazon with Prime shipping, so we'll get it right away.
Who's at the door?
I may have already ordered all 3 colors for us already. And thanks to TomTalk for sponsoring this video.
Retroid has pretty much perfected their unboxing experience. The box flips open, and underneath the Quick Start card, we've got the 2S up top with the USB-C cable underneath. The Retroid Pocket 2S has a pretty different control setup compared to the previous 2 Plus model. We've got 2 real Hall-sensing analog sticks with L3 and R3 functionality. This is a massive improvement over the previous analog nub thing on the 2 and 2 Plus. We don't even need to play any games to know that this is going to be better. The D-pad has been swapped to the same D-pad on the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, so it's smaller and clicky, more like a PS Vita D-pad. The face buttons are rubber membrane, and they feel good as well. Above the D-pad and ABXY are the start and select buttons. Below the analog sticks are 3 buttons for home, back, and menu. Another huge change that we've got here are analog triggers. This is a huge addition to the Retroid Pocket lineup, and they feel absolutely fantastic. They're super springy and very satisfying to use. Also, at the top of the device is our USB-C charging port and our micro HDMI out. The bottom of the 2S is where you'll find the micro SD card slot and a headphone jack. Spec-wise, the Retroid Pocket 2S has 2 hardware variations, but both of them have a Unisoc T610 processor, a 3.5-inch 640x480 screen, a 4000 mAh battery, an HDMI out capable of outputting 480p, and run Android 11. The Retroid Pocket 2S starts at $99. That will get you 3GB of RAM and 32GB of internal storage. For $20 more, you can get 4GB of RAM with 128GB of internal storage. The model I have here is the higher end model. I think the benefit of 4 times the storage for just another $20 is worth it, since now I don't even necessarily need a micro SD card. The Retroid Pocket 2S introduces a new transparent green color, which I have here, but you can also pick it up in an SNES style, a DMG style, indigo, black, and transparent black. Comparing the designs, I always seem to end up with the model that looks the nicest but has the ugliest buttons. I really wish the transparent green had the black buttons instead. It feels like it would fit the color scheme much better. Powering up the Retroid Pocket 2S, we're taken through a top-notch setup wizard. It's refreshing coming from other handhelds back to a Retroid because their software is just so tightly integrated. The setup wizard lets you get connected to Wi-Fi, select what emulators you want to have pre-installed, and then you're able to choose between the Retroid launcher or the Android home screen as your default. For my initial setup, I always go with the Android home screen. And then, once I download additional emulators and get ROMs loaded up, I'll switch over to the Retroid launcher. As usual, Retroid's got a clean, pirate-free experience. We've got the Google Play Store available if we want to add any other apps or games, and only our pre-installed emulators are here at the start. Retroid has also perfected the settings of their device, placing everything inside the native settings app with a section dedicated to Retroid settings. Over the last few years, the Retroid launcher has seen so many improvements. It's simple and fairly intuitive to use, so I don't even feel like I need to replace the launcher when I have a Retroid device. One small annoyance with Retroid software though is that even though the setup wizard does a great job of just getting you the emulators you need right away, they don't come completely pre-set up. You will need to go into each standalone emulator app and map all of your controls. I also found that by default RetroArch's input mapping is a bit weird and I had to change that globally too. It's not a huge deal, but Retroid is just so close to having an all-in-one solution with little to no setup, but this one gap is just slightly annoying. When we get to gaming, the classic stuff really shines on this device. The D-pad is top tier and makes playing classic systems a joy. Super Nintendo has no issues whatsoever, with the obligatory Yoshi's Island test playing at full speed, no slowdowns. Game Boy and Game Boy Advance feel great on the 2S, with only slight bezels since neither are native 4:3 aspect ratio. When we get to slightly higher end systems like PlayStation 1, we start to make use of the analog stick. And wow, does that analog stick feel absolutely fantastic on the 2S. It's probably one of the smoothest analog sticks I've ever played on. When it comes to GameCube performance, while you should definitely lower your expectations, it's kind of incredible what the 2S is capable of. The 2S has a lower chipset than the 3 Plus, but if we focus on playing PAL versions of games, we can get some pretty solid performance. Games like Super Mario Sunshine are really great examples of a game that can run at full speed and at the same time make use of those analog triggers. I found that the latest nightly versions of Dolphin from their website perform much better than the versions of Dolphin or Dolphin MMJR that come pre-installed through the Retroid setup wizard. Mario Kart is another game that really does perform pretty well. Even Paper Mario, which is a more graphically intensive game, runs extremely well on the 2S with only some slowdown here and there. I think Melee is just about the cusp of what this device can handle. It plays pretty well at most times, but there are some pretty big frame dips here and there. But of course, there is the upper limit of the 2S. Something like F-Zero is just not going to cut it, which should have been expected. Some games will still have frame dips, and you may need to play with the settings to do some underclocking, but I think that the experience on such a small device is pretty impressive. Next, we'll take a quick look at 3DS. Through the setup wizard, we're able to install Citra and Citra Enhanced, but I've actually found that there's another variation of Citra called Citra Antutu, and I've had some pretty good success using it. A game like New Super Mario Bros. 2 has pretty big slowdown in cutscenes and on a level selection, but once you're in a level, it actually plays at full speed, and I haven't experienced any slowdown during gameplay. Ocarina of Time also runs really well. I found that sometimes there could be a moment of a freeze, but I think it's actually pretty tolerable. That doesn't mean that every 3DS game will run at full speed though. Mario Kart 7, for example, sometimes runs and sometimes doesn't. When it does run, it's just too slow to play, but of course for the video it wouldn't load into a track at all. Nintendo DS is much less power intensive though, so it runs fantastic here. Mario Kart and New Super Mario Bros. Are great experiences on the 2S since you don't really have to worry about the second screen as much. When it comes to PlayStation 2, Aether SX2 is unfortunately just not as well optimized as Dolphin with GameCube. You can definitely get some games running at full speed though, especially if you use the PAL versions, but you will need to change the underclock settings. Lastly, let's take a quick look at PSP. While the performance is good, the letterboxing is pretty dramatic. You get a fairly tiny area of actual playable screen space with PSP, so even though I think performance is pretty good, I don't think this is really the right system to even experience PSP games. So is the 2S worth it? I actually think that the Retroid Pocket 2S is the definitive Retroid Pocket at this point. It's not as powerful as the Retroid Pocket 3 Plus, but I think the combination of the smaller form factor, great analog triggers, and some of the best analog sticks I've ever experienced, this is an emulation handheld that stands out from the rest. The $99 entry point is great, but for $120, you get more RAM, which definitely gives you an advantage for GameCube and PlayStation 2. On top of that, you get the 128GB of internal storage, so you don't even really need a microSD card. What I'd love to see next from Retroid is maybe a Retroid Pocket 3S. Give me the analog triggers, the Hall sensing analog sticks on the shell of the 3, and then the only difference is really the screen. The super high quality widescreen versus the 2S's relatively small screen. Honestly, I wasn't really expecting to think much of the 2S, but I'm loving my time with this device. Retroid hit another home run with the 2S, and I can't wait to see what they bring to the market next. But maybe they could wait a little bit. But let me know down in the comments, what do you think of the 2S? Are there too many Retroids? How about a Retroid Pocket 3S? Do you think that's next? Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss future videos, and thanks for watching.